How's it going, everyone? As you can tell from the title, I have a very exciting video for you all today. I'm going to be replacing the brakes on all four corners on my 2008 Saab 9.3 Turbo X. The Turbo X comes with some bigger rotors than most other 9.3s. Your stock normal 2.0s generally came with 302mm front rotors, and then the V6 Aeros, the front wheel drive ones at least, came with 314mm rotors, but the Turbo X came with 345mm rotors. So the car is in need of brakes at all four corners. Currently I am waiting on my rotors for the front and the rear to come, as well as the rear pads, but I did get the front pads in already. They are EBC red stuff pads. These are highly recommended. So these should be a nice upgrade over the stock pads. They have good reviews, and they also are supposed to have very little brake dust, which was one of my primary concerns when looking for pads. The rotors are technically an upgrade as well. These rotors right here, just 345mm, no slotted or drilled or anything. So I did order some slotted rotors for the front. I also ordered slotted rotors for the rear. The pads I ordered for the rear are just ceramic pads. I ordered the rotors and the rear pads from a site called R1 Concepts. This is not in any way a sponsored video, but they had a Black Friday sale going on, 30% off everything. So I actually got front rotors, and rear pads for like $210 or so. A couple more things though before we get into this video. I do want to talk about brake upgrades real quick. If you do have a V6 Aero with the 314mm, or just any other 9.3 I guess without the 345mm, there are some very simple good brake upgrades you could do outside of just upgrading to this exact setup right here. A lot of people go with the 4-piston Brembos, which I really wanted to do. The only issue with that is they make direct kits to fit onto the 314mm rotors, but they do not make anything directly for the 345mm rotors. So I asked around, especially on the Turbo X Facebook group, and pretty much the answer I got is you have to get something custom. Now there was a setup I was looking at that would require some custom brackets, and then obviously some Brembo calipers, same size rotors, and pricing everything out, you know, for calipers, brake lines, rotors, and especially those brackets, that all would have cost me around $1,000 for just that stuff. And, you know, considering the price I got this other stuff for, it was kind of an easy choice to just say, okay, well, if there's not really anything that will directly fit, or that is at least a little bit more affordable, then I don't think it's really in the cards to upgrade. A lot of people say anyways, these brakes are more than good enough, and I would completely agree. I mean, I think that these Turbo X brakes have been great, and especially even at the end of their life, as they are right now, they still brake very well. But part of me really wanted to do an upgrade since I've kind of been upgrading every single thing on this car. I figured brakes were kind of one of the things that I really wanted to do. Since there's nothing that's really just like straight bolt-on, which is the kind of modifications I like to do, I don't like to have to do custom work to my cars, because not that it's sketchy and there's a problem with it, because there's not by any means. But I just am someone who likes to be able to bolt stuff up and have a direct fit. That's kind of why I did the Aero upgrade on my 2.0. But anyways, I'm just rambling at this point, so I'm sure you guys can understand why I didn't do an upgrade. Also, the previous owner painted all four calipers black to prevent them from rusting, and you can see the paint on them just does not look very good. So I've never been a fan of it as long as I've owned the car. So we're also going to be painting these calipers silver. This will be in a separate video that will probably come out before this one, so make sure to watch that if you haven't already. But the rear calipers have the same situation. I've just never really been a fan of how they looked, and I really like how the stock silver looks, and with the color wheels I have, going with anything like blue or yellow would just look weird with the bronze wheels. So I think silver is probably the best look. Long intro, I know, but I just wanted to state everything and get it all out there. But with that all being said, let's get the car jacked up and get started on installing these brakes. Alright, so I'm actually kind of in the middle of filming my my brake caliper paint video, so I'm a little bit switching between the two videos and filming, so you can see that I've done some work on this caliper and it's a little bit less black. But in preparation to paint it, I have to remove it. Also to, you know, replace the rotor and pads, I have to remove it as well. So we're going to start by removing the front calipers here. That went flying. If you look back behind your caliper, you got your bleed screw right there that's illuminated, and then right above that you'll see a dust cap. There's going to be one of those up here and then one of those on the bottom. We'll pop those off and then use a 7mm to loosen the guide pins. So to make this easier to remove, because these pads are so worn, you can barely even see any life on the pads right here. It's about a little bit wider than the head of the screwdriver. I'm sticking a flathead in here to compress the piston on the caliper, so I'm prying it against. If I take this tape off that I have masking, you'd be able to see it a little bit better. There we go. Just prying it against there to compress this piston, and see, now the caliper will slide right off. But I'm going to finish compressing this so that way I don't have to do it before I put the new pads on. And I hear a truck, possibly a UPS truck, which might mean my new brakes coming right now. Oh, he just stopped. New brakes are here. So first, we've got our ceramic brake pads for the back. Of course, we have the EBC red stuffs for the front once again. Oh yeah, those look pretty good. All right, the exciting moment. You guys have already seen it by the thumbnail of the video probably, but I haven't. Oh. Yeah, those are pretty big. These are heavy too, but oh, look at those. Yes. These are gonna look so good on the car. Before I pop this caliper off, there's a clip back here for the brake line. I'm gonna pop that out so that way I have a little bit more leverage. With that off, we can pop our pads out. Jeez, I don't know what's built up all back there, but that is disgusting. And it looks like, judging from the red, these actually already had red stuff pads on them. So that's pretty cool. Just kind of pry the other pad out too. So you can see these pads are better than the rear ones, but there wasn't a ton of life left on them. To put into perspective, this groove was almost completely worn through. I compressed the piston most of the way when I was taking the caliper off earlier, but I do still need to compress it the rest of the way, so I have one of these right here, and it is latched in there. So now if I turn this, should just compress it the rest of the way. Might be a little bit hard to see on camera, but it's almost pretty much flush now. I bought one of these at Home Depot, I think, for like $20, and it makes this super easy to do. There are two big Torx bolts. There's one right there, and there's one up here, and that is what holds the bracket on. I just realized I said Torx. They're not the Torx sockets. They're these E sockets, or whatever you want to call these star-shaped ones. Even with some WD-40 this morning and letting it sit for 3 or 4 hours, I still couldn't break it loose, and that includes using a breaker bar and an adapter, which is Craftsman, so you know, nice quality, that snapped, and then we've got our socket. So I just put some more WD-40 on all 4 corners, not just here, and I guess we'll let it soak for a little bit and then find a different way to try, because I can't use the breaker bar anymore with this adapter being broken. When in doubt, air tools. Yeah, it had thread lock on it, so that might partially explain why that did not come out. So I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty bad. So the 2 air tools we have could not fit in this space right here with the socket on them, both a short socket or a long socket. So with the short socket, it wouldn't fit with this bracket here. So I eventually got it loose with the 3/8 ratchet after a lot of sketchy creaks, and now it's making like a permanent squeak as I turn it, so that's fun. But hey, it's loose. I also had to thread the other one back in a little bit because it tried to rotate the whole bracket as opposed to just loosening the bolt. So that was fun. Just shows how well not only thread lock works, but how big of a pain rust can be. Oh, well, I guess that works.
Meanwhile,
all 4 calipers are painted. That was a lot of work to get those prepped for paint, but I'm super happy with the result. Again, if you guys want to see that full video, make sure to check it out after you're done watching this. While I'm waiting for the paint to dry, I'm going to clean up these guide pins. These 2 I already did. You can see they looked pretty bad before. These are 2 I haven't done yet. You can see that they have some paint on them as well from the last paint job, so they weren't really masked off or even removed like when I painted mine. But I'm just using some brake cleaner and then some really fine like 1500 grit sandpaper to get this paint off right here. I switched to the other side of the car because all the tools are over here and I'm too lazy to move them back to that side just to move them back over here again. So we're going to do this side first. So let's take our caliper off. I have this box here I've kind of been using to just hold the weight of it. Now the rotor, not sure if I filmed it because it was yesterday, but I also knocked the rotor loose yesterday, so that'll just fall right off pretty much here. There's our bracket. Now before we go any further, the hub right here, excuse the background noise, our 9.5 is leaving, but the hub right here is very rusty, so we're going to use some wire brushes on here to kind of just smooth it out a bit so the new rotor is nice and flush on there. Time to get our new rotor on. Line it up. I would recommend ordering new one of these because 2 of mine were stripped and these ones are a little bit rusty. Just again, not tight on this. Like that's more than tight enough. Time to put our bracket back on. You can just slide it right in here. Line up the holes for the 2 E20. Now we can get some brake caliper grease, or just some grease, and we're gonna put some right in here on the back side, and the same thing on the bottom because the pads are gonna go in here, so we want this to be nice and smooth. We're also going to put some of this on the guide pins as well. When you look at your brake pads, you'll notice they're pretty similar looking. The one with the bigger clip though is going to go on the back side, and this one is going to go on the front side. So meaning this one is going to clip into the piston. And you want to make sure this is the whole way compressed before you pop that in there. And this one you can just slide in. Now let's slide this back on into place. And you'll see your pad should just kind of hook over there into the caliper bracket, both front and back. And there you go. That's quite the color scheme. When I tighten these guide pins down, I'll usually do like the first one about halfway, and then the second one I'll just do it the whole way, but I only want to get that first one started so that way I can still move the caliper around if I have to. Before I do that though, actually, I just realized I forgot to put disc brake quiet on these, so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to put it on the clips on the front and back. I started to chip the paint just in like 1 or 2 spots right here, trying to put this retaining clip in, so I'm going to do that later off camera. But pretty much what you want to do is put the top part in first, kind of like this right here, and then you're going to get this little tab on the bottom here into this little hole in the brake pad, and then bend it down around the bottom. So I was messing with it for a couple minutes and I started to chip the paint, so I'm just going to let the paint cure for a little bit longer before I try to start hitting at stuff and possibly scratching it even more. One last step I will do though is spray down the rotor with some brake cleaner, since my hands are all dirty and gross and I was touching it. I want to make sure it's perfectly clean when I put the wheel back on. So the clip is back in on this side, and if you come over here, this front one is completely done too. I can't wait to one, drive the car with these brakes and also put the wheels back on to see how good they look. In order to compress the piston on these rear calipers, you're going to need to get a kit like this. You can rent them from AutoZone or your general auto parts store for like $60, and then they'll give you your money back when you bring the kit back. But it pretty much goes inside the caliper. It has little pins that'll go inside those holes on the piston, and you pretty much twist it to compress it. It slides in there like this, and you just rotate up here, and that's how you twist it and push it down. New rotor is fitted. Now we have to take some grease once again, put it on these grooves right in here, top and bottom, and we'll also put it on the guide pins, and then we will put our pads in. We'll also put some disc brake quiet on those. I made a little marking just so I wouldn't forget on the old pads when I took them out. But the one without this little spring, this one's going to go on the back, so it's going to face this way, and then the one on the front is going to face, well, of course the one on the front, the one without the spring is going to face this way. So I don't know why I just showed you that with the old pads instead of the new ones. We've got our guide pins. Don't forget to do what I did. Make sure you scrub down the hub of the wheel with a wire brush before you put the new rotor on. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, I definitely need to do this. This is disgusting. Super laid out. I've been working pretty much all weekend on this project, but it's finally done. So it's dark out, as you can see. The front ones are done, rear ones are done on both sides. There is a little bit of touch up I need to do, and I also need to clean these rotors real quick to get some of the grease off of them. I'm going to put a little bit of touch up paint on all four calipers, clean off the rotors, put the wheels back on. The car is back on the ground. I haven't driven it a ton. I really only drove it about 2 miles here and was just on and off the brakes, you know, 50 miles an hour down to 20, back up to 50, down to 20, probably 3 or 4 times. So that's really all that I've tested them so far. And these need to be broken in properly before I can really push them to the limits. And when I take this car on canyon runs, that's when I'm really going to hopefully see the improvement with these brakes. But I am so happy with how this looks. I think the silver calipers, it probably won't stay this bright. I'm sure they'll get dirty over time and will just fade a little bit, but like, it's a perfect color. It's not too bright, and it's also not the boring black that also just was faded and old and gross. So I am so happy with how this paint turned out firstly, and I'm also super happy with just the look of these brakes so far. So these are the 345mm slotted rotors off of R1 Concepts. Can't forget about the backs too. I did the same thing back here, the 292mm slotted rotors as well. Also painted the calipers. But yeah, I'm super happy about this. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below in the comments. I guess time will tell how well these end up working out. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Also give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you all next time.